Well, I can't tell you how happy I am to be here, and I want to thank Reverend Luz LaCour for so graciously inviting me to be back to speak. I am thrilled. And today's talk is about the Christ Chalice. Did you realize that the evolutionary process of creation is for you and for me to grow into the perfect divine idea for mankind held in the mind of God? Did you know that? Yeah. And what is that perfect divine idea for mankind? It's Christ in you and Christ in me, our hope of glory. I want to ask you some questions. Do you truly believe that it is possible to attain Christ consciousness? You do? Let me see a show of hands of everyone. Wow, we have an enlightened group here. Yes, we do. Excuse me. So for those who raised their hand, I have a second question. Now, do you believe that you will attain Christ consciousness in this lifetime? Raise of hands. Awesome. Wow, this is quite a crowd. Wow. Well, my hope is that by the end of this talk, every person in this sanctuary and those viewing will be raising their hands, at least to the first question, and hopefully to that second question as well. Yes, yes. In 2015, a Unity minister asked me to take over her class the following week because she was going to be out of town. It was a quest class, and the topic of that class was God mind. Well, sitting in the sanctuary the Sunday before, Dave and I were sitting there, and before the service began, I asked silently of Spirit, how do I explain God mind? This conceptualization immediately downloaded. I named it the Christ Chalice, and because I had taken the 25-plus course curriculum to become a licensed Unity teacher, I knew what each one of those components represented and what its function was. When I got home later that afternoon, I sketched it out, and this is that hand-drawn conceptualization that dropped into my mind. This Christ Chalice represents how Christ mind operates and how Christ consciousness functions. We're going to go through every segment of this conceptualization. So, the Christ Chalice conceptualization shows God mind as absolute, eternal, changeless, omniscience, all-knowing, omnipotence, all power, omnipresence, everywhere present. It shows the three phases or aspects of the human mind. This superconscious mind, here's the subconscious mind, and the conscious mind. And it also shows the relative world. This is the relative world. Both the physical relative world of time and space and form, and the non-physical relative world of a collective mind and race consciousness. In Christ consciousness, divine ideas and revelations and visions and direct knowings and guidance, divine guidance, flow freely from God mind into the superconscious mind. This superconscious mind is non-thinking. It's just open and receptive and in resonance with God mind. Yeah, it's in the here and now and present. It is a receiver and a transmitter. It transmits from God mind those divine ideas and inspirations into the superconscious mind that is held open and receptive, down into the subconscious mind. This is our operating system. This is what's functioning most of the time. They say like 95% of the time, the subconscious is functioning. And from there, these divine ideas and inspirations flow from God mind through the superconscious, through the subconscious mind, into our conscious mind. And this conscious mind is our thinking mind. The subconscious, like the superconscious, is a receiver and a transmitter. It is non-thinking. So it just reflects back what impressions it receives, either from the superconscious or from the conscious mind. But this conscious mind is the thinking mind. And when we are in a state of Christ consciousness, it clears up, it dissolves the misperceptions that we have been conditioned into believing in our subconscious mind and in our conscious mind, so that the divine ideas and inspirations from God mind can flow freely out into the relative world, both the physical relative world and the non-physical relative world. So this physical relative world is, as I mentioned, time and space and form. It's what we see with our human eyes. And this non-physical relative world is the collective mind. It's the memes. It's the current prevalent belief systems, and it's always changing. It can be influenced. It has our race consciousness here in non-physical relative world. In a state of Christ consciousness, the divine ideas, inspirations, visions, revelations flow from God mind through the superconscious mind, continuously embedding into this superconscious mind those divine ideas and impressions that bring it to our conscious mind, that then flow out into the relative world. In a state of Christ consciousness, what do we bring out into this relative world? We bring those divine ideas and inspirations in the form of institutions of peace, organizations for the benefit of mankind, beauty and loving blessings that really bless everyone, that has everyone, all humanity's benefit in mind. A person in Christ consciousness is emanating an energy flow that emanates love and peace and joy, such high vibrations that they raise the vibrational frequency of race consciousness and influence the collective mind. That's how important it is for us, individually and collectively, to attain Christ consciousness. This Christ Chalice conceptualization depicts that we are fully equipped, each and every one of us, and essential to attaining heaven on earth, to becoming our true selves, our God selves, and attaining heaven on earth. How does that sound to you? Yeah? Do you believe it? Is it possible? Yeah, it really is. It's possible. Well, I really am not asking you to believe me. You don't have to take my word for it. But if Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, were here, and he was saying essentially the same thing that I just said to you, would you believe him? Probably would, right? Yeah. So I'm going to read to you quotes by Charles Fillmore, who over 100 years ago said essentially these same things, and he describes the transformation process, this evolutionary process of creation. He describes the three phases of the human mind: superconscious, subconscious, and conscious mind, and our role in it. Most of the quotes that I'll be reading to you came from 4 of Charles's works: The Revealing Word, Christian healing, Keep a True Lent, Talks on Truth, and Atom Smashing Power of the Mind. But he writes through all of his books about these kinds of concepts. Let's begin with a quote where he explains creation and the evolutionary process. Charles says, "The order of creation is from the formless to the formed, from the invisible to the visible. Spiritual evolution is the unfolding of the Spirit of God into expression, the Christ, or Son of God, as the supreme attainment of every man." Christ is talking about the evolutionary process of creation ongoing, from the absolute to the relative, from the invisible to the visible, the spiritualizing of the human self into the full expression of the God self. He continues, "This perfect idea of God-man is yourself. God-mind is, under the law of thought, constantly seeking to release its perfection in you. It is your spirit." Charles is talking about each and every one of us, no exceptions. We were born this way, with this imprint, this possibility, that Christ Chalice. Can you hear Lady Gaga singing, "I was born this way"? Yeah, we were born this way. Charles describes God-mind this way: divine mind, God-mind, ever-present, all-knowing mind, the absolute, the unlimited, all-wise, all-loving, all-powerful spirit. He's identifying the nature of God as omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. Here's how he describes the superconscious phase of mind. Superconscious, and we can leave that graph of the Christ Chalice up there if you could, please. Thank you. The superconscious mind is the realm of divine ideas, a state of consciousness based on true ideas, on an understanding and realization of spiritual truth. Now, this is important. Do you remember Reverend Chenoweth, who used to say, "When I raise my hand, this is really important"? Well, I'm going to do the same thing because it works. So this is really important. The superconscious is man's only sure guide through the maze of the creative process. By trusting to the infallibility of this guide, man opens himself to the inspiration of the Almighty. Now, I want to share with you something that Charles wrote in the Revealing Word when he was describing the superconscious mind. It is a profound prophetic warning, and this is what he wrote. "Men must see beyond matter and material possessions, or civilization will perish from the earth. If the superconscious or the Christ mind is not developed, the people will destroy one another in insane warring for the fleeting things of the world." Ooh, wow. Let's take a deep breath there. Ooh. Now, I didn't read that to you to scare anyone, but I did read it to impress upon us the urgency of the hour that we are in today, because none of us can deny, looking around with our human eyes, that what he described is what we see today going on all the time, right? But we have the capacity to change it, and that's what this Christ Chalice identifies. We are built in with the capacity to uplift and change the paradigm of what's taking place in Earth today. So let's hear what Charles, how he describes the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the vast silent realm that lies back of the conscious mind and between it and the subconscious. You can see that on the Christ Chalice graphic. The subconscious may be called the sensitive plate of mind. Here it is. Its true office is to receive impressions from the superconscious and to reproduce them upon the canvas of the conscious mind. What Charles is saying is that the true function of the subconscious mind is to act as a receiver from the superconscious and to transfer those impressions to the conscious mind. The subconscious is the go-between. It is the receiver and the transmitter. He continues, the subconscious mind has no power to do original thinking. So it's a non-thinking mind. It acts upon what is given it through the conscious or the superconscious mind. Then Charles explains how we have misused our human mind capacities. He writes, man, however, having lost the consciousness of the indwelling Father as an ever-present reality, has reversed the process and impresses the subconscious from the conscious mind. In this way, the former is made to register impressions of good and evil according to the thought held in conscious mind at the time the impression is made. So let's take a look again at this Christ Chalice graphic. Humanity has been living in sense consciousness primarily, right? In using our five senses to detect what's going on and to gather information from our five senses. But what we know is that we need to attune our conscious mind to God mind and to God mind only. But in sense consciousness, what we have done is reverse the process. We've used our five senses to pick up information that we see with our human eyes in the relative world, to be influenced by what's going on in race consciousness, collective mind, and that feeds our conscious mind, which then impresses the subconscious mind with those misperceptions, which then reflects it back to the conscious mind, that then comes back into the relative world and brings more and more of those misperceptions, escalating those misperceptions here into the relative world. And it's like a feedback loop going back and forth and back and forth. Primarily, our plumbing is stopped up. Right? So, Charles continues, no enduring structure can be built by one who is a double-minded man. Man must go back to his source and let its clear light flood his whole being with truth. That's truth with a capital T. And what is truth with a capital T? It's anything that God is. Anything that God is truth with a capital T. Charles emphatically tells us that we are only to take impressions through our individualized aspect of God mind or superconscious mind. By living in sense consciousness, in duality thinking, we have been perpetuating and increasing more and more negativity and separation into the relative world. He explains, the subconscious mind cannot take the initiative, but depends on the conscious mind for direction. The subconscious mind is the non-thinking phase of mind. It's a receiver and a transmitter, a reflection plate. So what our conscious mind needs to do is always point to God mind, rather than picking up information from the relative world using five senses. Get that? Well, okay, all right. So Charles describes the conscious mind as that phase of mind in which one is actively aware of one's thoughts. The conscious mind is the only phase of mind that is the thinking mind. We are aware of what we are thinking when we are in a conscious state of mind. It is the phase of mind in which we have control over where we focus our attention. To God mind or out in the relative world. So this is what Charles tells us about the transformation process and attaining Christ consciousness. This is really important. The superconscious mind lifts up or regenerates both the subconscious and the conscious, transforming them into the true image and likeness of God. The conscious mind must be faithful during this transformation. It must look ever to the superconscious for all direction and instruction. Charles could not be any clearer in this instruction. The conscious mind is meant to work like this laser pointer, highlighting where we need to bring our attention to God mind. It must always be attuning our mind to God mind, directing our focus and awareness to God mind only. And we can do this. This is possible. In fact, we were made this way. We're made this way, holding on to truth and truth only in our mind. It's through our superconscious that it does this. Good affirmation to use is, my mind is stayed on thee. My mind is stayed on thee. You can say that over and over to yourself, bringing your mind into perfect alignment, attunement with God mind. Charles says, man is in God mind as a perfect idea. God mind is constantly trying to express in every man its perfect idea, the real and only man. You know what? All it takes is our desire. Spirit does the rest. All we have to do is choose, commit, and cultivate what is already there, the Christ nature of our being. This Christ Chalice conceptualization depicts how we are born fully equipped and are essential for the evolutionary process of creation to reach its ultimate state of perfection, creating heaven on earth. Charles continues, through man, God is forming or manifesting outwardly that which exists in the ideal. In his every thought, man must consciously cooperate with divine ideals. When one concentrates all the faculties on truth, ideals, the conscious mind and superconscious mind blend. There is a descent of spiritual energies into soul and body. In other words, we are essential. We are essential in this evolutionary creative process, and our ultimate purpose here on earth is to attain Christ consciousness, creating heaven on earth. This is the fulfillment of the divine plan of creation. And there is no more urgent time than right now, today, for us to embark on that full-bodied expression of realization of our Christ nature. Well, I have so much more I could share with you, but I'm out of time, at least almost out of time. And so this is what I'd like you to do, if you would, between now and hopefully the next time I come and speak, please find the video called Living as a Prayer of Thanksgiving. It's on my YouTube channel, Patricia Wagner. You can find it there. I posted it for the first time on Facebook Thanksgiving last November, and then I sent it out to a few very, very special people. One of those was Dr. Ed Dodge, an icon in this church, which so many of us know. I asked for his feedback, and I asked if I could share what he wrote back, and he said yes. So this is what Ed Dodge wrote about that video, which I want you to view, please. Living as a Prayer of Thanksgiving. He said, I watched your video on gratitude with much appreciation. It is a beautiful video. Your gentle message about the blessings of gratitude is excellent. I love your example of how you handled the emotion of anger when you received a negative email response to your query. The way you handled it and the ultimate outcome are wonderful examples of the benefit of living in heart-centered gratitude. He said, I learn from your message, even at my advanced age. Always humble, Dr. Ed Dodge, and his birthday was yesterday. He was 87 years old. If you're watching, Ed, happy birthday from all of us. Yeah. Wow. You know, yesterday was a live stream that I had purchased before I knew I was going to give this talk, and it was from San Diego, the TCCHE conference. I don't know if any of you are aware of it. It's a consciousness conference, and yesterday the speakers were Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, Marianne Williamson, and Anita Morgiani. Whoa, I couldn't miss that lineup, right? So I was watching them all day, and every one of them said that the most important thing we need to do right now is to really live our divinity, to claim it, to live it, to realize it, and to fully put it into action, because that is what is going to change our world. Greg Braden even talked about a God code that he scientifically deciphered, that a God code, and I'm not going to tell you the words, you'll have to watch this, but the God code is written in the DNA of every one of the 50 trillion cells in our body. It's stamped right in there. That is living proof that we are divine. This Christ Chalice conceptualization is another living proof that we are created in the image and likeness of God. Recently, I watched your Jubilee video that you produced last summer, talking about the history of this church. Oh my gosh. It started with 6 people dedicated to spiritual truth, and that has not changed here. Look at what you have here, from Reverend Luz LaCour to Z, who is on her way to becoming a licensed Unity teacher, to 4 seasoned licensed Unity teachers here, just embedding their spiritual consciousness into this community, and not to mention the consciousness of each of the members here. Oh my gosh, you are primed. Please watch that video, Living as a Prayer of Thanksgiving. It's wrapped around Eddie Watkins Jr.'s song. Thank you, God, for everything. You'll hear it there. That video contains spiritual practices that I believe is one of the ways we can fully come into our Christ nature if we implement those spiritual practices. And I am more than happy to help this community if you desire to implement those practices here. So I'd like to close this talk with another quote by Charles Fillmore. You know that man was a prophet. And so what I'm going to read you, I believe, even though he wrote it probably 100 years ago, he was talking about right now. The time is ripe for the advent of a new race, the advent of the spiritualized man. This will be brought about not by a miracle or the fiat of God, but by the gradual refinement of the man of the flesh into the man of spirit. Thank you so much for asking me here today to speak. For the praise and glory of God, we are awakening. Namaste.